Hey, what's happening? Welcome to the Pleasure Points podcast. I'm your host, James Rohr. I'm happy that you're here. Today's episode, I finally got this guest on that I've wanted to have on the show ever since I started this podcast. His name is Dr. Yoav Suprun. He is a physical therapist who is dynamite. He's one of the world's experts at treating back and neck pain in particular. And his particular approach is something called the McKenzie style. And I've never seen anybody get the results that he gets when it comes to resolving pain. Absolutely tremendous. More important to me than all of his professional credentials, he's a very, very dear friend of mine. I can't imagine being the man that I am and the kind of practitioner and human being that I am had I not known him. I met him in 2008 when we both started working at Canyon Ranch together before they opened. We've been partners in the South Beach office, and he's just a super solid dude. And we had a really great conversation looking at all these different facets of pain. At the second half of the episode, we start talking about sexual positions when it comes to pain. So definitely one you're going to want to tune in for the entire way. Absolutely tremendous. So my big thanks to Yoav for coming on the show. You can check out his work at Sobe Spine. That's SOBE spine.com. And as always, you can check out my work on dating and relationships and coaching at invitinginlove.com. Or you can follow me on Instagram at James E. Rohr. That's ROHR. So without any further ado, please welcome to the show, Dr. Yoav Suprun. All right, we're live. Hey, dude.
Hey, man.
Dude, I'm so excited that you are here. This was when I started doing podcasts, when I was thinking about doing a podcast, you were top of the list of people that I wanted to have on the show and interview, because I think that you're leading this little revolution that's going to blow up into this massive revolution as people realize that, you know, the way that Western medicine has approached pain is like just so misguided. You know, I think they've totally missed the mark, and that pain is just so nuanced. And so I'm really excited to have you on here because, I mean, everyone deals with pain, and if they're not dealing with it currently, they know someone that probably is.
Absolutely.
And I've had the pleasure of working with you for, when did I meet? 2008, right?
Canyon Ranch. Canyon Ranch, 08, yeah. Good old days.
One of the things that I've been so impressed with listening to you and sharing clients with you over the years is how good you are at like meeting people where they are and then pushing them kind of out of their comfort zone so that they can find comfort, so that they can get back into a state of pain-free.
First of all, thanks for having me, Jim. It's a pleasure, always a pleasure hanging out with you. I myself had so much pain in my own body, you know, fractures. I was a crazy kid and fell off trees, and 7 fractures, 3 car wrecks, motorcycle accident. So I experienced pain on my own body, and I learned over the years through experimentation, unfortunately you can call it experimentation, that the body heals itself usually pretty well. But we all feel what's called mechanical pain. Mechanical pain, for example, is when you woke up one morning and you try to turn your head and it's stuck. Like yesterday it was fine and you could turn like an owl, but today it doesn't move. Or when you sat in your car for a long car ride, or you watched a movie on your sofa and you got up, and the first 4 or 5 steps you kind of feel stiff in your lower back, and a little bit maybe your pain in your butt. Sometimes it may be radiating down the leg. And as you walk around your house, it goes away. And it comes and it goes. And we believe, we being McKenzie physical therapist, mechanical therapist, which is what I do, we believe that everyone feels these mechanical aches and pains on daily basis, almost on daily basis. And usually the answer is movement. Not to freak out, not to seek medications, not to seek treatment, is movement. The question is, what movement is the right movement? Because some movement is amazing and will make you feel good, and some movement can make you feel worse. Mm-hmm. And finding out what movement is best, or what's what we call directional preference, what's the joints in your body need to go to a certain direction. And the question is, how to move them in that direction. So I went to a good school. I went to NYU, and I paid a lot of money for my doctorate in physical therapy. That's after being a bad personal trainer in New York City in the 90s, where unintentionally I injured, not injured badly, but I've given wrong recommendations to people as far as stretching. And it was very easy for me to become a personal trainer. I mean, just 3 days ago was on NBC how simple it is to get an online certification as a personal trainer. How many people are actually getting worse when they're working out with their trainers.
Yeah.
And I was one of those trainers that injured some of his clients. And then I said, okay, I got to get better at what I do. And I went to NYU and I graduated and I started working for one of my professors, but I wasn't really happy with the profession of physical therapy, to be honest. I felt like, okay, I'm doing some ultrasound, electric steam on people's back, giving them some core exercises and stretching them. And then I was introduced to this McKenzie method. And Robin McKenzie was an amazing man. He passed away in 2013. And he basically developed this method that puts the responsibility on the patient, puts the responsibility on you understanding your body better and moving in a certain direction to abolish your pain. And in the process, there's some fear, because who wants to move into the pain?
Right.
And what really...
Yeah, the instinct is to move away from it. Right?
Exactly.
Like you got a tightness on the right side of your neck. What do? You pull your head to the left because you're like, oh, it's so tight, I got to stretch it out.
Exactly. Or when your lower back hurts, child's pose feels amazing. Or baby's pose in yoga feels amazing. You lie on your back and you hug, so it feels good. The question is, does it make you good? Will you need to do it again in a half an hour or in an hour? And if you keep doing those stretches and the pain keeps coming back, maybe stretching is not the right thing for you in that moment or in that period of time. Maybe you need to move in a different direction.
This is my favorite part. Like when I've listened to you over the years talking to clients when they see you for the first time, this is my favorite part when you're like, no, don't move your head to the left. You're going to move it to the right into the pain.
Right.
And you're like, it hurts when I do that. And you're like, I know, I got you. Yeah. It's okay. And they're like, fuck you. It hurts that way. I'm not doing it. And you have this negotiation back and forth.
because to explain to the public who is so bombarded, especially in America, so bombarded by the pharmaceuticals that pain is a bad thing. We always say, when I teach it, I'm a faculty with the McKenzie Institute, and when I teach it, I say to my students, I say, tell your patients, hurt doesn't mean harm. You have to understand what good pain is and what bad pain is. And what really, when I saw the light, was in 2003, when I took a McKenzie Part B, and exactly what you just described, Jim. I had pain on the left side of my neck that was radiating down into my shoulder blade and intermittently into my left arm. And I kept stretching to the right, which felt good, but it didn't resolve the problem. And I got massages and I got injections and I got manipulations. And only in that course, I took it with a guy named Dana Green in New York State. When I took the course with him, I really found a solution from, 8 months of pain was resolved in 3 days. And I said, wow, that's like something I never got in NYU. Why did I pay all this money and no one shared that secret with me? That movement is the medicine. Often, not always. Sometimes you do need a medral pack or steroid or injection. In some cases, people do need surgery. But most people need to know how to move and figure out what's going to make them feel good and remain good.
Yeah.
And it's a little scary, just like, when we were kids and there was a sliver, a thorn stuck in our hand and mom came with a tweezer, the first couple of times mom didn't see the thorn and she kind of like hurt us a little more, again, unintentionally, until she pulled it out. Same thing with neck pain, back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain. Usually there's a direction that we find as mechanical therapists, and I'm part of a large group of McKenzie therapists in the United States. And my office is, as you know, in Miami Beach, but we're in every state, and we're actually in 28 countries. Our goal is to move the patient and to find what direction they need to move in and educate them in doing those self-mobilization, self-help procedures throughout the day. That's the big thing.
When we started at the ranch, I came, like I said, from a hospital system in Chicago, and I came down there, and I met you, and we're setting up our offices because we were there before the whole thing opened, and you're like, yeah, I'm the physical therapist, and I go down in your office, and there's no gear, there's no equipment, and I was like, where's your ultrasound, your e-stim, your cups, your Graston, and like all the things, and you were just like, no, I don't do any of that stuff. And I remember you saying once, we were talking about the profession, and you were just like, as physical therapists, if we keep stealing from other traditions, right, taking a lot from Chinese medicine with Graston, which is gua sha, you've taken the cups, now they're doing dry needling, which is like a whole other can of worms that I don't want to get into.
Yeah.
And you're like, as a profession, we keep taking these things from other traditions, and how good actually is what we're doing.
Exactly.
And that's where with the McKenzie stuff, it's been amazing to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know, like, I remember one time at the ranch when I was there, and I had the thing where I was totally locked up. Well, actually, no. I remember what I had was I had this pain in between my shoulder blade and my spine. And it felt like someone was just taking an ice pick and stabbing it. And I was in a lot of discomfort. You noticed in the team meeting that I was not moving as well. And you were like, what's going on? I was like, I think I need like some soft tissue work here. Like, it feels like maybe I pulled a muscle there. And like, I don't know. It was really weird. And you humoured me. You touched that spot, and then you were just like, all right, move your neck. Like, it was on my left side. You're like, turn your head to the left. I'm like, that hurts. And you're like, I know, just keep doing it. And I kept moving and moving and moving. And then after about 5 minutes of that directional movement, that stabbing pain in between my shoulder blades completely went away.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And it changed the way that I did my acupuncture, because I was like, oh, whoa, this is a whole thing where people are reporting the pain isn't necessarily at all where the actual problem is.
Yeah. It actually all started in 1956 when Mr. Smith walked into Robin McKenzie's office in Wellington, New Zealand, and he was limping. And Robin said to Mr. Smith, what's going on with you? Why are you limping? He said, listen, I have this shooting pain down the leg. It used to be in my back, but now it's down the leg, and I don't trust my leg when I'm walking. So Robin said, all right, go to room number 4, lie on the stomach, I'll be right there. And then he walked to room number 4, opened the door, and the table was left in a position of extension, as if you're lying on a beach chair. And Mr. Smith laid on the stomach in a position that Robin McKenzie told him to lie in. And 10 minutes later, Robin walks into the room, and he sees the patient lying on his stomach, fully extended. And he's like, oh my gosh, this must be like the worst thing for that patient. And he says to Mr. Smith, how are you feeling? He says, I feel pretty good. He's like, really? And he gets up and he walks around the office. He's like, yeah, leg pain is gone and back feels pretty good. The pain moved from the leg to the back, and then it disappeared from the back. That's a phenomena that, all your listeners are welcome to Google. It's called centralization of pain, centralization of back pain. Sciatica that starts in the back and goes down the leg is a bad thing. But when you have leg pain or nerve pain in the leg that moves towards the center, towards the back, it's actually a very good direction. And that's what Mr. Smith felt. And Robin asked him to do certain movements over the next couple of days. And he started to experiment with moving people's spines. And then he found similar things in the neck. And it took him, years to develop his method. But what he found out is, yes, he can mobilize someone's neck or back or adjust them. But the damage really occurs when patients leave our offices. It's how we sit and watch TV in bed. I've seen an increase of neck pain when people started binge watching before Game of Thrones. People try to catch up, and people are coming to my office, my neck is killing me, my neck. And what have you been doing? Well, it was raining over the weekend, so we binge watched Game of Thrones. And, how many of us lie in bed with 2-3 pillows behind our necks, which forces strong flexion on the neck. Or we always look at our phones. And, the head weighs 4 kilograms, which is about 10 to 12 pounds. It's a lot of weight that we put on the neck. And if you do that all the time, or you stare at your monitor, there should be a movement into the opposite direction that puts things back in place. But it's interesting because so often simple solutions don't work for the general public in America. They say, oh, it cannot be that simple. And often it is. But people want complicated, well, shouldn't I go get an MRI? Well, guess what? Get an MRI on 1,000 people with zero pain. The radiologist that analyzes the MRI will find often in at least 80% of the cases, major changes. So we don't look necessarily for the MRI. We're looking to move you and see what's going to be the response to your movement, to your mechanics, and to your symptoms.
Yeah, MRIs are like it's interesting to see how they just lead to typically overtreatment.
Yeah.
But didn't you tell me that they have, I think McKenzie was doing some studies where they would put people in an MRI with pain, give them directional movements, and then redo the MRI, and they would see that the disc could move?
So there's still controversy around it. Yes, there are studies that show that absolutely there is disc movement, especially if the disc is still full and intact. It could be affected based on the things that you do. But there are people that have pain that's not coming from the disc. In other words, the research is not conclusive to say what it is. It could be your facet capsule. It could be the ligaments, could be a muscle, could be the disc, could be the joint. The whole joint can move. What we call it a derangement can move out of alignment. Many things can move out of alignment. McKenzie's theoretical model was that if Mr. Smith came with sciatica and he extended his spine, his theoretical model was that the disc moved back into the center and the pain receded from the leg back into the back. But there are people, it's still a controversial concept. There's still people that say, no, the disc cannot move. What do we know? A lot of MRIs do show that there's bulging disc or herniated disc. That doesn't matter because you can get bulging disc or herniated disc and people have zero pain.
Yeah.
That's an interesting phenomenon. So we can't go by the MRI. So who really knows the truth? The patient. But you can't pull the truth out of a patient if you need to see 3 patients an hour. And so many people in my profession are forced because of the insurance companies. I remember when some insurance company owed you, remember a few years ago, they owed you, tens of thousands. And they're like, we'll just pay you, whatever, $7,000, where they owe you $20,000.
Yeah.
Well, you see a $7,000 check, you're like, okay, I'll take it and I'll deposit it. But insurance companies are squeezing us to see many patients. I take 90 minutes initial eval. I want my patient to sit down and tell me their story. People need time to express what it is that they're feeling. It cannot be rushed. I think one of the chief complaints in America, I think the average time is like 7 minutes with a medical doctor. So we're luckier as physical therapists and as acupuncturists to have more time with the patients. But it's pressing, and it shouldn't press the patient to tell the story. They should feel comfortable talking about their pain.
Which is one of the things that I find so interesting about you is that, you've got such a structural focus, and, you talk about the mechanical movement and McKenzie's books on treat your own neck and treat your own back are they're so easy to read. It's so logical and straightforward.
Yeah.
It's it's incredibly refreshing.
Yeah.
And yet you, especially from when I first met you to where you are now, is about to be a dad and all the things, your expansion to kind of hold or have the capacity to deal with some of the emotional components around the pain has really grown. And that was a huge thing for me when I had the sciatica down my leg. It started in my foot.
Right.
The worst pain was in my toe.
Yeah.
And it was in hindsight, I was completely freaked out. My marriage was not going the way that I thought it was.
Yeah.
The whole stability of my house was thought oh my God, I'm going to have to move to New York. And I've got a son who was I think a year old, maybe not even. And I remember it was Christmas Eve that I went in for an MRI, and I hadn't been able to walk for 5 days before that. It was crazy.
Yeah, I remember that.
And you were I remember you were very gentle with being well, maybe there's some other things going on here. And it took me, it took me months, maybe even a couple of years to fully realize the magnitude of the emotional stuff that was there that I think just expressed itself through this pain.
Absolutely. When we teach it, we tell our students, you got to pay attention to certain flags, certain yellow flags, black flags, blue flags. These are things related to the whole biopsychosocial model, you got to look at the person as a whole and take into account. Some people are very, very nervous about their pain. So these people, first, you got to calm them down and find a mutual language to allow the patient to feel comfortable next to you and to open up. And a lot of the times when you develop this rapport with a patient, you're listening to them, good stuff happens. Mm-hmm. And the most important thing is to educate that hurt does not mean harm. The body is an amazing machine that fixes itself. We just need to, at time, help it.
Yeah.
And to be able to look beyond the mechanics is what's going on in that person's head. Mm-hmm. I believe it was John Sarno.
Sarno, yeah.
They wrote a lot of books in New York. I believe it was a psychologist that said, talk to your sciatica and say to it, it's okay, I know you're hurting. My leg is hurting right now, but you got to kind of like come into terms with it. And the more relaxed, and there's patients that say, listen, he's changed my life. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's many ways to attack pain, and there's many philosophies and genius people that developed different techniques to address pain. But I got drawn to Robin McKenzie because of my left neck pain, and how I was able to change it was it's such an eye-opener for me that I was like, whoa, I have to dive into this method. I got to teach it eventually. And I love standing in front of a group of 50 physical therapists in a class, and chiropractors and medical doctors, and we treat patients on the stage, and it is hard. I mean, you have people in the audience that sometimes want to see you fail.
Sure.
And they want to see you fuck up when the patient comes in and their sciatica is raging, and they're coming the following day and they're worse. There's people that are like, oh, yeah, that extension really screwed up that patient. And sometimes it happens, but a lot of the time people come back better if you educated in the right direction and you gave the correct advice on how to live your life outside the office. Speaking of carrying a child, okay, I'm going to be a dad in 2 weeks. So how did I prepare? How does my wife Shani and I are preparing the house? For example, changing table. We're both tall. The changing table should be high. You can't bend forward multiple times knowing you're going to be bending forward into the stroller and into the crib, and there's a little human that's basically, floor level. You're going to bend all the time. You got to do things. And then there's movements in the opposite direction I'm going to start to do a lot. For example, once he starts to crawl, I'll be on my stomach a lot, playing with him, lying prone in extension on my stomach. I will not sit Indian style on the floor. I will not do a lot of that kind of sitting with my butt. I would lie more. Why? Because it will oppose the loads that I do as I stand and treat him and hold him, etc.
Because the issue for so much of us is too much time in flexion, right? Forward flexion. We're bending over, what is it, like 8,000 times a day or something crazy.
Yeah, about 35. Around 4,000 times.
And so, like, how often do people actually lean back, or like with the neck, how often do you actually look up at the sky or your ceiling? I mean, in New York, it was like, I remember one day I was walking down the sidewalk and I was like, I'm tired of looking at the sidewalk. I'm going to look up and just like eyes at least straight ahead, And I took 3 steps and something just caught my attention right before I stepped, and my foot was over a dead bird on the sidewalk.
Ooh.
And I was like, fucking New York, like you have to keep looking down. And so we're talking about like this counteraction of forward flexion, and like Jen and I went to a yoga class last week, and the yoga teacher I think was new, and it was like it was like 98% of the movements were forward flexion. And the guy even made a joke about it. He goes, I just love forward folds. And I was like, dude, like enough with these already. So I've learned enough from you and done stuff with Jen where if I'm in a yoga class, I might miss an entire sun salutation sequence because I'm just going to hold up dog to counteract all of the forward folding that the teacher's doing.
And that's the key. Now something that a lot of the yoga instructors don't know, a lot of the trainers don't know. You experienced it on your own body, and it's hard because often flexion feels good. The average person on the planet, when they're hurting in their back, there's 2 things their brain will tell them to do. Number 1, lie on your back and hug your knees to your chest. Number 2, bend forward in the shower, have the hot water hit you in the back, and hold your toes as if you're, flexing in standing. We call it flexion in standing. It feels good. Some people do need it as a movement or as a mechanically determined directional preference that they need to do for their back. But the majority of people need the opposite movement. More people need extension than flexion. Look, where do we see our grandparents age? Into what direction?
Yeah.
My dad is 90, my mom is 85. People flex. As we age, we flex forward. Robin McKenzie's posture, and we were in New Zealand both in 2007, 2010. Even at 83, 84, his posture was impeccable. He was super erect. And aging bent forward is an option. You don't have to do it if you know the rules of counter movement, if you're not afraid to move into the pain. If someone guides you in the process, it's actually fairly easy. It's very logical. That's the beauty of this method. It's super logical. Yeah, about 3,500 times a day we bend forward. From the moment we get out of bed, putting, just squeezing the toothpaste on a toothbrush, brushing our teeth over the sink, spitting into the sink, washing our face, shaving the legs, sitting on a toilet. And now with today, 50 years ago, you sat on a toilet with a newspaper, you started an article, the article had a beginning and an end. Facebook has no end. People are sitting, taking their time for hours on the toilet, bent forward, all slouched, leaning on their knees. They're like, my back hurts. Yeah. And then what do? They go spinning. So after you sat on the toilet for 2 hours, a day, and you sit in your office chair for hours, you choose spinning as your form of exercise. And then people say to me, well, at the end of the spinning class, the instructor said to put my leg on the bike seat and to stretch my hamstring, and I felt a pop in my back.
Oh, yes.
And I'm like, well, and then goes the story of mechanics. Right. Why do you think this direction is the right direction? And it's hard for people to, when I see the patient in my office open their eyes and they're getting the mechanics of flexion versus extension, something starts to change at that moment. And it's radical because so many people are not sure if their workout is actually making them better or worse.
Right.
And that's a whole other avenue.
One of the things that we've talked about before that just strikes me about human nature is when people keep doing shit because a doctor or a trainer or a physical therapist said to do it, but it's not making them feel better. If anything, it's making them worse.
Yeah.
Like in Chinese medicine, this comes up a lot with ice versus heat.
Yeah.
Chinese medicine loves heat. Now, part of that's because I don't think they had ice. I know they didn't have ice on demand, but people keep icing their injuries.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how are you doing? They're like, well, I feel bad still. And it's like, well, maybe we should stop icing. Let's try something different.
Yeah.
But people are like, well, I just keep forward folding, because that's what they say. And the yoga teachers are always like, be careful in extension, be careful with bridge pose, be careful with this. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
It's like, why do you keep doing that thing if it still hurts you?
Yeah. And you're right. And when people ask McKenzie, what do you recommend, heat or ice? He said, whatever makes the patient feel better. Because the placebo effect is also important. It's important to let the patient be in control of the session to some extent. Some people are very adamant about it, but you got to work with the patient. And if someone says to me, it definitely makes me feel better, I'll work with them on that. And there's arguments, for years they said you sprain your ankle, you should ice it. Now there's the whole protect, rest, ice, compress, elevate. Some researchers are now saying, actually don't ice it. Let the area swell up. The body is bringing the right soldiers into the area to fix the area.
Yeah.
And if you're icing it, you're impeding on that repair mechanism. So... Yeah, so, stuff is
and
changing.
Context matters, right? It's like when I was treating D. Wade, it was like, he had the ice compression sleeve. And it's like, because he's got to perform that day or the next day. And if you're like, someone who's sitting in a cubicle, like, let your ankle get big.
Yeah.
What do you care?
Yeah.
It's fine. Like, it's meant to be that way.
Speaking of basketball players, I'm sure you've seen, or maybe you've seen, LeBron James walks around with a McKenzie lumbar roll attached to his back. And we've been following and sending him kudos on social media because he's in the subway in New York and people take pictures. People are like, what is it hanging on his back? And he figured something very important. When my lower back is in the correct position for him, I feel better. And then you started to notice, even on the side of the court, when he sits on the chair, he has this very large wedge that he sits on top. So it elevates, it elevates his hips above his knees. Because these guys are so tall. They're huge and they're sitting on these ridiculous chairs. Yeah. And they're supposed to these are the things that people have to be aware of. When you buy a sofa to the house, you can't just go to IKEA or wherever and just buy, based on the budget, you have to stick to a budget, but guess what? Like even in my parents' house, I bought sofa risers that go underneath the legs of the sofa, and you can raise it 4, 5, 6, 8 inches. All of a sudden you sit and it's such a different feeling. A lot of people don't realize that the furniture in the house, the toilet, the height of the toilet, the height of your counters, things like this, changing tables, all those are important considerations one must pay attention to when they're living in their apartment, in their house, in their office, etc.
One of the things that I talk about a lot here on the podcast and with my clients is how environment and context plays such a huge part of our well-being. And that when things aren't going the way that you want them to, whether you're in pain or you're not having the love life that you want, or you're, not making the money that you want, you got to take a look at what's your environment. What is happening around you? What is your setup? Are you set up to thrive, or are you, every time you look at that painting on the wall, do you cringe because it reminds you of something and you hate it? Or like we were talking before the show about, our partners being in apartments where they're like, oh, I feel the energy of your ex here, and it's like, something's got to change. And so you're like, okay, great. Like, let's set this up so that you can thrive. And I had a client in New York. She had that radiating pain down her arm. And I've learned from you, and she goes, well, my pain's worse at night, which is something that people report. It's common. And I said, well, what are you doing at night? She goes, well, nothing. I said, well, tell me about your nightly routine. And she goes, well, I do this my day, and then I come home and I love to watch TV, in my favorite chair. And I said, great, describe to me that favorite chair. She goes, oh, it's this great lazy boy, and it's got this extra pillow on for my head, and it's just so comfortable. And I was like, great, so you're protruding. This is pushing you forward. Like those neck rolls that people have on the airplane.
Exactly.
It's like, wait, that just puts you even more in flexion.
And you're right. A lot of people in the plane, their back often is worse, their neck is worse. It feels like your neck should be in that position, but sustained position. I just had a patient this morning who wakes up every morning with headaches. With a headache, she walks around the house and the headache goes away. Well, what do you think it is? And then we're talking about the mechanics and the pillow and the things that she does during the day. And it's not a disease. It's not sensitivity to food. It's the headache is mechanical. And she said, I started to realize when I move my head in a certain direction, I can shut it off. But it doesn't hold. Well, yes, if you're able to abolish it and it comes back, guess what you need to do? More of the same, possibly sustain it.
Right.
And so we just played with it and it works. If you're able to shut something off and it bounces back up, if you try to close the trunk of your car and something is sticking there and you're trying to push the trunk, you're gonna push it and you're gonna give it this little stronger push. Often a little bit more force is the answer. Not always, but often. And people have to look into their environment. A lot of car seats to prevent whiplash. A lot of the car seats manufacturer actually put the headrest so it protrudes you a little bit and prevents that whiplash moment on the neck. But it actually, people say, I bought this car and my neck is numb. I'm getting headaches or pain radiating down into my arm. Sometimes I say, listen, legally I cannot do it for you, but try switching your back seat and your front seat. Headrest. Often it fits, or flip it around, or put a lumbar roll so you sit further away from your headrest. Yeah.
Remember that client that we treated in South Beach who was like I think she had a trust fund, right? So money wasn't really an object, and she was driving up to her horses in Palm Beach or wherever, wherever the horse thing is in South Florida here. And she had that sciatic pain. She had that horrible back pain, and she was driving in that like fancy convertible in those bucket seats.
Oh yeah.
And we were like, we both told her, it's like you might want to just get a different car completely.
Yeah.
And she got a Range Rover, and her back pain, with our treatment and then the change there, because she was spending 4 hours a day almost in her car driving, on her way to ride horses. And she had this horrible back pain, and she refused to stop riding the horses. Right? She wasn't necessarily coachable, except in that context where it was like, buy a different car. And she's like, okay, that I can do.
Sometimes people think, okay, so I'm sitting at a Mercedes or a BMW or an Audi, whatever, and great cars, but if it's not set up properly for your height and your body and the mechanics of what you do, you gotta wonder what's really. And I don't know if you remember, I had this guy who came to see me, who used to be in an SUV, and when he retired, he said to himself, okay, I made a lot of money and was a successful businessman, and he bought himself a Ferrari. Mm-hmm. And as I'm interviewing him in the session, he's limping into my office. And I said, when did your pain start? 4 months ago. What happened 4 months ago? Nothing. I've been doing the same thing with trainers. And as we're talking, he's saying, yeah, you know what? 6 months ago, I got a different car. And it creeped up on him, and he realized he gets out of the car. It takes him about 20 seconds to straighten up. Mm-hmm. And I said, listen, even if you give me this car for free, I'm 6'4", I wouldn't sit in a car like this. Mm-hmm. Go back to your SUV. And I don't know if he did or not, but...
Dream crusher.
These are things people have to pay attention to.
Well, it's context. I mean, it's environment, right? It's like, what is the context in which your pain is happening? And that's one of the things that I just think is so important in this pain conversation is that, people that feel like they have intractable pain, that it's never going to go away. I mean, when my sciatica was bad, the emotions around it, I remember laying on the treatment table because it was either the floor or the treatment table was the only places I could get into a position where the pain in my foot would go away. Mm-hmm. And I remember laying there and thinking, is this my life? And I'd see Wyatt, who was crawling around, and I'd just be like, is he going to grow up knowing his dad is like an invalid, or his dad is this guy who has this back pain all the time? And like, oh, that's just dad. He always hurts. Mm-hmm. And that added emotional part of it was so overwhelming. I mean, when I think back on it, it's like it's that extra emotional juice that made the inflammation like way worse. I mean, look, the MRI showed I had a herniated disc. The surgeon was like, you need surgery right away. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I think I might have been uninsured, or I was like close to it, And I was just like, that's not happening, Mm-hmm. And working with you and then the other PT, and the other PT was like, man, this has been great to like watch you heal. He goes, I never see someone who came in as bad as you did, mm-hmm. and who didn't get a cortisone shot, who didn't get surgery, mm-hmm. and to just heal it naturally.
Yeah, the cells that help the area heal is called phagocytosis. It's like Pac-Man. It comes and chews it up. The body tries to help you. The key is to, again, relate to the emotions of what you feel, and catastrophizing it can make it such a... people still, like even a few days ago, a patient said to me, when I get nervous, I feel pain in my neck immediately. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, when you get nervous, next time, let's try to realign your posture and let's see if the pain is still there. Mm-hmm. Just experiment with it.
Right, which is great too, because what I love about that also is that part of that movement is going to be the retraction, right? Where you're going to kind of tuck your chin in a little bit, feel this lifting through the top of your head. Yeah. And I say with my coaching clients, like if you're not feeling good, if you're in a low state, if you're having a bunch of negative thoughts and you're really frustrated, like change your physiology, stand up, walk around, stand tall, strut a little bit, like get a little swagger going, and then see if you still feel bad.
Yeah. You know what? I would say in the past 2-3 years, I've been writing on a home exercise program. I've been writing more and more. Please walk 5-6 times a day for 10-15 minutes nonstop. I believe it's more important to walk throughout the day in short segments because we sit in a car, we sit and watching television, we sit in front of a computer. Just move. Mm-hmm. By just moving, your body gets better. It needs movement. People know that you need to walk 10,000 steps a day, but I think the average in America is less than 5,000. Yeah. And,
I walk way less now here than I did in New York. Sure. In New York, I was walking an hour a day at least.
Yeah. New York is a walking city.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah. It felt so good.
Miami Beach, people walk more, but Miami or Key Biscayne or...
Yeah, especially in the summertime. It's just hot. It's hot. And then it rains and you're like, oh, fuck it. Yeah. The walking... there was a study that showed they were looking at doctors who ran. Mm-hmm. And so they had everyone in the group ran, I think, 3 miles every day or like 4 times a week or whatever. And then they were studying their cardiovascular health. And what they found is that the doctors whose offices were further away from their patients that had to walk more during the day were healthier.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah. It's psychology. Like you drive to whatever Target or wherever supermarket, and you'll see the congestions of parked cars next to the entrance door. No, go park it all the way at the end and walk. It's a little thing that you can change in anyone's life that will make them feel better. We don't have to be like right there.
There was a meme going around a while ago about like life in America, and they had a 24-hour fitness, with an escalator going up to the entrance. And that was the gym I used to work out in San Diego. And it was amazing to me when you'd see these people who would run for like 2 hours on the treadmill, and they're like fighting for the spot closest to the gym to take the escalator up.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing.
So what are the things that when you hear people talk about it when it comes to pain or movement that just make you like absolutely cringe? Like for me, it's like one of the things is like foam rolling, or people say my IT band is tight.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it's supposed to be tight. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. Please stop foam rolling your IT.
Yeah. So I used to recommend for people to foam roll their IT band until I start to understand what nerve pain is, and how the spine can create pain in the extremities. That's not really an extremity. It's not really your leg. It's a pinched nerve in the back, and you feel it in the leg. And it's very hard because when someone walks the street and all of a sudden their right hamstring gets tight, and in general, no human being that walks the street should feel tightness in their hamstring unless they did a very heavy workout the day before and both their hamstrings are tight. Mm-hmm. You did deadlifts, you did hamstring curls, you did plyometrics, you can have both your legs tight. But if you're feeling pain on one side and you keep stretching it, it's rarely muscular. Although it feels muscular, it's often a neurological induced pain that's coming from the spine. And those are the things, or the piriformis, the butt muscle, that you go on Dr. Google and you do piriformis stretches and you'll see a million hits of, people showing the figure four and lie, and you should lie on a tennis ball, and you should have your, significant other shove their elbow into your butt and,
See your acupuncturist have to needle it. I made a career out of needling the piriformis.
and so often we find that there is something going on. Could it be the muscle? Of course it could be. But a lot of the time there is a spinal component. And I think chiropractors, people ask me, what's the difference between you as a doctor of physical therapy and a chiropractor? Chiropractors know, when you walk into a chiropractor's office, you'll see the spine, you'll see, how all the organs receive power from the spine. And it's true. The difference between us in general is McKenzie therapists or mechanical therapists like myself, we try to give you the tools within 4 or 5 visits to take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. And if your workout is causing you to feel unilateral pain on one side of the body, and you keep stretching it, or you do a yoga class and you drive home and the leg is talking to you, or your butt is talking, or you get numbness or tingling, although the brain will tell you to stretch your calf or stretch your hamstring or go into figure four, you should probably seek help figuring out what's going on with your spine, because it's not what you're feeling that is the source of the pain. It's often the root exists in the spine. So those are the things that usually tick me. Last week I had a lady who came to my office a few weeks ago. Her doctor told her, do not wear high heels. And she says, when I wear high heels, my back pain and sciatica goes away. Mm. But my doctor told me not. So she comes to my office in flats. And we talked about why. And I said, not stilettos, but wedges, like platforms. She said, I feel great in those. We talked about the fact that when you're in heels, your center of gravity shifts forward. In order for you not to fall on your face, you actually extend your back a little bit.
Interesting.
And she's like, yeah, so now it makes sense. But why did my doctor? I said, listen, the doctor doesn't know. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of mechanical information that's not being taught in medical school. We see it on daily basis where people say, I went to the best knee guy. Oh, I went to the hospital for special surgery.
Such a New York thing.
The best hip guy. Yeah. And they MRI'd my hip and they said, I'm bone on bone. Or my knee is, the worst knee they've ever seen. And they replaced the knee and then they come to see me like, I still have knee pain. I'm like, did they look at your back? They're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, did the doctor, the best knee guy in New York City that looked at your knee and replaced your joint, did he look at your back? So what do you mean look at my back? Did he move you to see if the pain generator is your back or your knee? And there's a huge study that's coming out now, and the statistics are staggering. 71% of hip pain is of spinal origin.
Yeah, I believe it.
25% of knee pain is of spinal origin. I believe 44% of shoulder pain is of neck, aka spinal origin. Yeah. So we have to
They talk about carpal tunnel and how overdiagnosed that is, or misdiagnosed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
People are like, I have carpal tunnel in both my wrists.
Yeah.
Like, do you type? They're like, no. What? Like, no. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah. Bilateral carpal tunnel syndrome is not common.
Yeah.
The neck is often the source. Right. Yeah. So there's such a big need to educate the public. And that's one of my career goals is in addition to seeing patients in my office, I do consultations to organizations, to companies, large speaking engagements to educate the public what mechanical pain is. The more people will know what mechanical pain is, the less they will take medications. And we already see a huge influx of addiction to opioids in America because people say, well, I'm in pain. Let me take, oxycodone or whatever for pain. And often what you need is correct positioning and movement.
And to just accept that, what were you saying? Like, pain is, it's not necessarily damaging.
Right.
It's a sensation. And with the meditation and mindfulness stuff that I like to talk about, it's like, so it's a sensation.
Yeah.
It's a sensation. It's okay.
Absolutely.
Like,
it's okay.
Let's just breathe in it. Like, I'm here with you. And that's what I love about your practice model is spending so much time with your clients because it's like, I'm here with you. I see you. I hold you. I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. And you're going to get better.
And look, I'll be honest, I get recurrence in my neck because once, when we teach it, we always say, once you have it, there's 100% chance you will have it again. But the key is not to freak out. Is, okay, I'm hurting in my neck or I'm hurting in my knee or in my back. Okay, what can I do right now with movement to try to change it? A lot of the time, 80%, 75 to 80% of the patients, often they need some guidance, can fix it with just positioning and movement. But if you freak out, if you start running to the doctor and you start to take pills to mask the pain, you're missing the point. You
miss the feedback,
yes,
right? It's like, how do you know what direction to move? Or how do you know like what's really going on there? Because you're just kind of numbing it. Yeah, it's huge. All right, let's talk. I know we're coming up on the hour here, but Jen was like, you have to have, she goes, your show's called Pleasure Points. You have to have them talk about sexual positions when your back hurts.
So that's actually a big topic that a lot of patients, when they come to the office, are afraid to talk about. I often see patients who say, I'm worse after having sex. They ask me what position is good, what position is bad, and it depends. But definitely, just like working out, certain positions in the bedroom can be detrimental. For example, you have right leg sciatica. You're a female with right leg sciatica. Your partner loves to have sex while you're lying sideways. If he raises your right leg towards the ceiling and like a hamstring / adductor stretch, your leg pain.
So she's laying on her left.
She's laying on her left. He's lifting her right leg.
And the pain's down the right leg.
Yeah, that can absolutely bother the nerve in the back. And the following day, you will get angry leg as a result of it. So modification will be to do it on the opposite side. Have the left leg in the air. Someone has back pain that says, I'm worse sitting in my car. I'm worse when I'm putting makeup and I'm leaning over the vanity. I'm worse when I am shaving my legs. I'm worse when I lift things from the ground. Basically, she's saying, I'm worse with flexion. She should not attempt to be in a missionary position with her partner on top of her because that flexion moment goes together with everything she just said bothers me. So women said to me, so what position? Well, there's the doggy style, or you can be on top and then your spine is fine temporarily. Can you go back to it? Of course. But first, let's fix the problem. And, the conversation becomes, I stick to a very mechanical, simple educational process.
Yeah. Because if they're in missionary right? And there's like they're going to have that round in their back that's similar to sitting on a bad airplane seat or on the couch where you get that same round in your back. And that's why we have like lumbar rolls you're talking about.
Yes.
All of that in the seats to try to push the spine into extension.
Yeah, it's a strong posterior tilt, which it's funny because a lot of people when they take yoga classes or take Pilates classes, and you lie on the reformer or you lie on the mat, the instructor always says, flatten the lower back into the floor. Do this posterior tilt where you're rolling the natural curvature in your spine. The lordotic curvature is being rolled backwards towards the ground. Feels good a lot of the time, but that's exactly the moment that hurts a lot of people down the road. Because when we sit slouched, that's the exact same position. When we bend forward to put makeup, when we sit on an airplane with our butt forward and not touching all the way to the back of the seat, those are often injurious positions that people don't know are injurious until people say, oh, I don't know what happened. All I did was I sneezed and my back went out. Well, what did you do prior to it? Well, yeah, I did watch Game of Thrones for 2 hours in bed. And I just got up and I sneezed, my back went out. Or I bent over into the refrigerator to take an orange juice and my back went out. Such a trivial thing. How is it possible? And people say, but I've been strengthening my core. I've been doing those things. Well, how come my back went out? Because it doesn't matter how strong your core is. If you're a sloucher, and if you don't know how to carry yourself when you're at home, it will affect your pain with activities of daily living, and it will affect you when you're having sex in the bedroom. So you don't have to go buy those swings. You have to hang off
apparatus.
It reminds me, I have a friend in Budapest. I was there, 10 years ago, a bunch of us, and he opens the door with a huge gash and a suture on his forehead. And he had his girl, he installed it in his bedroom, and the whole screw mechanism came off. She fell on the ground, got stuck in his skull.
Oh,
yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was hospitalized. So you don't have to go crazy with that.
And for guys with back pain and sciatica, they're going to have to, missionary could be a tough one, right?
So if someone is an extension responder, missionary could be okay, but it may be too aggressive for them initially, so they may want to lie on their stomach and prop on the elbows and read a little bit in this position before getting ready to that end range motion. For some, it will feel okay, but when I was in New York City, I was living in New York City for 13 years, and I had a patient there, older gentleman, and he said to me, listen, following day after I have sex, I can barely walk. Both my legs feel extremely weak and painful. And, he said to me, but the girl, I always lie on my back, so it's safe. I said, well, and your girlfriend is on top of you? I said, yeah. I said, and the following day you can't walk? I said, no. So I said, all right, can we try something? Since he have the most sophisticated high-low bed, he had his girlfriend lie on her back in the corner of the bed, and he stood, and they actually had sex while she was lying on her back, he was holding her legs, and he was just moving his pelvis forward and backward. I come to see him the following day. He is kissing me. You saved my sex life. He said, but I'm actually standing in my back. I don't throw my back out. I said, yes, because you're moving in the right direction. Yeah. When she was on top of you, she was deranging your back, and you kind of fixed it with this position. So that's something to consider. Maybe there's a sturdy dining room table you can put a little, towel or a pillow on and try different positions. It doesn't have to be in the bedroom necessarily.
Yeah, yeah. But again, it's like, the context matters, So it's like, what were you doing? What was going on?
Yeah.
And it could be that the positions that you're having sex in are just not that good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming over. I could just talk to you for hours and hours about
pleasure.
stuff. We didn't even talk about the pelvic floor stuff, which is like a whole other
we'll do that next time.
So let people know, how can people find you? Tell them about the cruise that you're going to be on too.
Yeah, so my website is Sobe, S-O-B-E, sobespine.com. And I will be, you can find a lot of information. My last name is Suprun, S-U-P-R-U-N. First name Yoav, Y-O-A-V. And I have a bunch of videos, educational videos about lower back pain, sciatica. And I'll be one of the speakers on Holistic Holiday at Sea, February 21st to the 28th, leaving from Miami. It's a vegan cruise, already 2,000 people registered, and I believe there's another 1,000 seats available. Top-of-the-line health experts and vegan authors are going to be talking about everything that you need to know in order to age well with minimal aches and pains. And would love to see you there. If you're booking your trip, I'll be happy if you come over and to one of my talks and introduce yourself. That's pretty much it. Facebook, I'm on Facebook. It's South Beach Spine Physical Therapy. That's my professional Facebook page. And I'm really happy to be here with my brother, with Jim. So happy how your life is moving into such a good place.
Yeah, it's nice, man. I remember one of the things that you said to me. I talk about it a lot with when I was married the first time, and you were just like, yeah, you'll you start working late because you say you need the money, you said you start working late because your patients request a later appointment. And then you keep working late because you're like, well, I like the extra money. And then you realize at some point that you're working late because you'd rather be at the office.
Right.
Going home is too stressful.
I remember that.
But, Jen and I wouldn't be together if it wasn't for you. She was going to leave town, and then you decided to commit to yoga. You were just like, I have to make a life change here, and I'm going to commit to yoga. And, you bought like a year worth of sessions. Yeah. That was enough for her to pay her rent, so she stayed.
Yeah.
And that's how I met her, and
amazing.
The rest is history.
The universe is amazing.
Well, thank you so much, man. I wouldn't be who I am without you. So
you're great.
It's just an honor to have you here. And check out his stuff. His Facebook things are great. I remember you posted something about talking about core strength. You posted something about like an Olympian athlete whose doctor told him that his back was because his core was weak, and he's like a weightlifter. Mm-hmm. It was a mechanical thing. And guys like, I'm an Olympian. Like my core is not weak.
It will look weak if your back is out. It will feel weak. It will behave like it's weak. But once the spine is in alignment, often the strength comes back.
Awesome. All right, guys, check him out. And as always, you can check out my stuff at invitinginlove.com. Thank you again to Yoav, and I'll see you guys here next time.
Thank you.